Right, hi everyone, thanks for joining me. So let's have a look at an engagement shoot that I did in Spain with the D600, and all of these photos will be taken on the 85mm 1.8G. I'm going to show you out of camera and my edits, and all of these photos are going to be edited with my wedding photography presets, which are in the link in the description below. So this is the first picture straight out of camera. So what I'm going to do first of all is warm up this picture because the white balance is definitely too cool. And then we'll come into my color preset and just bring up the exposure slightly. And then we can see that's the final result. When I'm editing engagement shoots or weddings, I use one color preset and one black and white preset. And the reason I only use one for each is because I want consistency. I don't want to have lots of things to select. I don't want to have 50 different presets to choose from. As a working professional photographer, I need to get on with it because it is true that time is money. So once I made my presets and I was happy with them and they stay the same, so my work is consistent now all the time. And that's good because when couples buy my packages, they know what they're going to get and they get it because I'm not flicking through 50 different presets trying to find a look that I want. I'm able to reproduce my look all the time. Okay, if this picture, I like these shots which is just before the kiss. In this instance we're probably going to have to brighten it up a fair bit, but let's get that temperature warmed up nicely. Colour and just brighten it slightly. So I'll show you the before and after side by side there, and you can see, nice and simple. So for this picture on the beach, just going to warm up slightly. And colour preset, maybe a tiny bit of magenta and a tiny bit lighter. Before and after, nice and simple. This picture, similar to the last one, we'll just warm it up a bit, apply the preset, raise the exposure slightly, and I think we're going to have to level out that horizon. Job done. Let's have a look at the before and after, side by side. So what you can see with the D600 is it really lends itself to that style of photography, I think really easily, but the files are so flexible. I think what you have to understand with it is you're buying kind of the flexibility that the sensor gives you of those raw files. The D600 personally, I think being very well suited to photographing people because skin tones always just come out so well on it. I'm going to show you some pictures that I did on an outdoor portrait shoot with the model. We'll go through some of the results from it. So this picture's had hardly any editing done to it. You think it would have had a lot done to it by the way that it looks, but actually it hasn't. It's surprising. There's not much being done to this picture at all. This is where the dynamic range I think really shines through. It's very easy to get this kind of look from the D600. Moving on to the next picture. This is a black and white conversion that I did. Again, very nice tones. These are all shot on the 50mm 1.8G. Obviously some of the rendering is down to the lens as well, but I think it's done a really nice job. Everything just looks good. I find the files from the D600 make very nice black and white conversions as well. Here's one in colour. Again, very nice tones, and I find that the D600 grades very easily. It's very easy to give it any colour palette that you want or push a colour range into it. The files are so flexible and easy to work with. In this picture I was hoping to get a bit more of a reflection I think than I did, but even so I still think the rendering of it looks pretty decent. I think it's come out quite well. We're going to get into some closer portraits in a moment as well, as you can see what the D600 can do in those situations. Slightly different mood here, but again you can see how sharp these images are. Lots of detail. Lots of nice skin tones again, the colour range is pleasing. I think the D600 does a very good job for portraits actually, and for most genres of photography. It's a decent camera. And in this picture here, showing full length, so you can just see some more of the rendering again. Of course, lighting really matters when we're doing photos like this. It makes a big difference, so you have to have decent lighting to start with. This is a very soft, overcast day, and we're using the way the buildings shape the light in order to create some direction from the lighting. Of course, I think the question with the D600 is going to be along the lines of like, is the focus good enough? Well, I think the focus is good enough. You might not think the focus is good enough. The focus points are grouped a little bit towards the center. Certainly if you're used to mirrorless now, they're in the middle. It will look like that. But they are quite close to the center. Now, when you use the outer points on it, you can do a little focus and recompose, and that's how I work with it. I find that's a quick and easy way to work with the camera. I kind of maintain this view with the D600. It's past the point where you need to care about stuff like that. It's good enough to do the job. Other cameras are better. There's no doubt about that. The D750 has better focus, but the D600 has nicer colours straight out the camera. Focus is plenty good enough for me. I'd rather have. Now the other advantage I've mentioned in my other videos with the D600 is also the battery life. You can go on a shoot for a day and take one battery with you. I've never known a camera to have battery life as long as the D600 does. One thing you have to be aware of with the D600, if you do want to buy one though, is that it doesn't have exposure preview in live view. That means when you switch to live view on the back of the camera, you are not going to get an exposure preview of what your exposure is going to look like. You'll see a picture, but it's just going to be like an auto expose thing that changes brightness and darkness as you move around. So that might be a deal breaker for you. It's not a deal breaker for me. I mean, it'd be nice if it had it, but I don't really care that much about that. It's not a big deal. Once you get used to a camera, you should be able to get your exposure pretty much nailed without having to use any sort of exposure preview. You should pretty much be able to do it by looking at your meter in the camera and knowing how your camera behaves. You should be able to pretty much get your exposure nailed straight away anyway. And that's a skill that's worth having in itself, I think. If you think that might be for you, then the D600 might be the camera for you. But you have to go beyond the spec sheets and just the camera tests comparing one to the other. So just say that one is better than another, it's not necessarily true, because it might be better at focusing and might have better ISO, but the files might not look as good that come out of it, and that's what really matters in the end. Because when I do this on a D800 or a D750, each time I apply preset, I have to do a lot more work, and I seem to have not been able to do it as easy to just tweak a preset to fit those cameras, because under certain lighting conditions they behave differently, whereas I find that with the D600 I'm just getting a more straightforward result and more consistent. And when I've spoken to other wedding photographers, whilst they might not have the D600 experience, they have on the D750 and D800, and they found the same thing, that they can't as easily consistently apply presets and get the same look all the time, that in different lighting conditions the cameras are behaving differently, and that they're having to do more work to try and correct skin tones and so on in mixed lighting, for instance. So it becomes harder to work with. So for me as a professional photographer, it's very important for me that I have a camera that I can just work with and get on with, and it's not going to start doing funky and weird things to my files. So that is why I like this camera so much. If you want to find out a little bit more about the D600, you can check out this video here, which is my review of D600 for weddings.